Everybody, let's get into it. Get stoked, get it started, get it started.
Welcome back to Talk of the Town with PG Sittenfeld, who is going to be the talk of the town today. You are listening to 1230, The Buzz of Cincinnati, and we are, again, delighted that Justice Yvette McGee-Brown, Ohio's a big state, folks. If you haven't driven from Cincinnati to Cleveland recently, do it. And she is zooming all around as she pursues re-election to the Supreme Court of the state of Ohio. Now, Justice, I think nobody would dispute the fact that our judicial system is not a perfect system. There are things to be improved. When you look at it and say, God, if I could wave a wand, or if you want to be sort of more practical about things you can actually fit, what would you reform in our judicial system?
Well, one is I would try to find a way to get voters to really educate themselves about the people who serve in the judiciary to make an informed vote. The reality is the time to think about who your judge is isn't on the day that you're in court. It's on election day. That would be the first thing. Secondly is that everybody needs to do jury duty. So many people get out of jury duty and then they complain about jury verdicts. It is a participatory process. We have the best justice system in the world, and it requires citizens to participate.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. You have to be registered to vote to be eligible for jury duty. Is that right?
Yes, you do.
All
yes,
right.
you do.
So, Emmanuel, you're registered to vote. Emmanuel actually votes several times. No, he doesn't. That's a joke in case I'm getting myself or anyone else into that. He only votes once, but he's ready and waiting for jury duty. So maybe a spicy case lingers on the horizon for Emmanuel. Now, I know that there are some funky rules when it comes to running for judge, and the only experience I've had is running for Cincinnati City Council. But you could say whatever you wanted. You could put yard signs everywhere. You could be as political as you want. You can raise a pretty good amount of money, and that's not exactly how it works when you're running for judge.
It doesn't. I mean, judges are not allowed to take positions on matters. They can't give an opinion on anything that might come before their court, which could be just about everything.
So can I just pause you there as we sort of walk through some of the things that seem a little odd? It's like you're a human being. You've had many formative life experiences. These things, of course, will weigh into the decisions you make, and I understand being a sort of sober, objective, jurist when you're sitting on the bench, but you're not allowed to have opinions or weigh in on matters. Is that, maybe you can't even answer this question? Is that healthy?
Well, I think the reason is because you don't want judges or people running for judge to promise a particular position, because every case should be judged on the law and the facts. You don't want people saying, well, if I'm elected, I'm going to do X, because that means they're not listening to the evidence. They're not applying the facts to the law. So I think that's why that rule is in place. Secondly, I think people have to judge judicial candidates and judges based on what they see as evidence of their character. What has this person done? Have they been involved in the community? Have they demonstrated they have the appropriate demeanor and temperament to sit on the bench?
It reminds me when President Obama was appointing, I believe, now Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor, and I think he said one of the things that weighed in his decision, he wanted someone who could be compassionate, and everyone's like, well, compassion, that has no place in the, and to your average person who's just sort of navigating, I'm like, yeah, of course, have a clear-eyed reading of the Constitution, be it the federal Constitution or the state Constitution. But yeah, I don't mind a little compassion. I want there to be a human being sitting on that bench.
Well, and it was in the 90s when we were going through mandatory sentencing. It was one of the things that I used to say at the legislature, mandatory sentences sound good until it's your child or your brother sitting in the court. You want that judge to look at you as the individual and decide your circumstance. Not that you get a one-size-fits-all, but what did you do and which is the appropriate sentence for you? And I think we have to be careful to take that. We shouldn't take that away from judges.
Now, money is regrettably important in political races. People they need to know your name. You need to be able to have the resources to get your message across. What are the financial rules around running for justice?
Well, for justice, we have contribution limits.
What are those?
It's $3,450 for an individual and $6,325 for a PAC, a political action organization. We can't accept corporate dollars. And part of that is to make sure that there's some fundamental fairness. You don't want people having the perception that judges or justices are for sale. And each level...
Only politicians should be in that category, right? Not just...
But, Court of Appeals and trial court judges have lower contribution limits. And then you just raise as much as you can. It's a big state, to your point. There's 11 media markets in this state. So if you want to get elected in a state of 11.5 million people, you've got to raise enough money to be on TV so that those people know who you are and what you will bring to the judiciary.
But so I'm understanding right, there cannot be judicial super PACs.
Oh, yeah. There can be independent expenditures. Yes.
Oh, so there can be independent. So
But the candidate can't have anything to do with those.
Right.
So there can be a group out there that chooses to engage in independent expenditure supporting a particular view of another candidate.
So Tamaya has heard me say this before. I do not think super PACs or the whole Citizens United fallout has been in any way healthy, but it does sort of seem like where we are. So if there is some listener that is looking to launch the Sittenfeld super PAC, I'm not actually.
You don't agree with them, but you'll accept them.
What I think we obviously really need to reform the way that campaigns are financed. Now, how different is the experience? You were the lieutenant governor candidate in 2010, along with then Governor Ted Strickland. So how different is the experience of a pretty political office and campaign versus what you're doing now?
It's very different because when you're running in the executive branch, you can have opinions on everything and you can be passionate about those opinions and you can share them. As I said, in this position, I really can't take political positions and have to be very careful of what I'm saying so that it doesn't indicate any predisposition one way or the other. It's also hard to get people's attention because people know what a governor does and people are excited and they want to see the governor. But when you're a Supreme Court justice,
people are pretty excited about you, though.
Oh, are they?
Oh, yeah, they are.
Okay, good.
We're excited.
That's good to hear. Yay. But that's really the biggest challenge and the biggest difference, I think.
No, I'm not trying to be silly here, but how far does the sort of no weighing in on certain things, no expressing opinions carry? I mean, if I say, Justice, what's your favorite food? And you say, peanut butter sandwiches, and then something comes up that's somehow relevant to, peanut farmers in Ohio, have you then compromised your... Okay, so
it doesn't go that far. I mean, we just had a case involving the dairy industry 2 weeks ago, and I like milk, and I don't think that says I'm going to... I'm willing to go that far.
She said she liked milk on Talk of the Town and never...
Milk and black eyed peas.
That's right.
Milk and black eyed peas. I did not know that. Obviously, everyone knows I like to lead in with my Black Eyed Peas song, kind of the signature of Talk of the Town.
That's my favorite song.
I just learned that we did not pre-script this. Yes, Justice Yvette McGee Brown loves that song, loves the Black Eyed Peas. Mm-hmm. We're all still seated in studio. No one's dancing yet. But what happens during break, it's impossible to say. Now, you were Governor Ted Strickland's lieutenant governor candidate. Mm-hmm. You got to know him very well.
Yes.
We've had him on this show before. Mm-hmm. Any speculation about what might be his future plans?
I don't know.
You can whisper it into the mic.
I don't know. I can tell you, I saw him last week, and he looks younger than ever. I mean, he just seems to be energized. He's traveling the country. He's fit. He's thin. I mean, I don't know
that's what being out of office will do for you, right?
Don't go get any ideas, PJ.
The best diet and rejuvenator of all time, not being in office.
That's right.
Yeah. Honestly, though, I do think that Ohio they have a little bit of buyer's remorse and want Governor Strickland back. He was an awesome governor. And when we interviewed him, it was such a privilege to talk about how much of a champion he was for education, and we really do miss that. And Cincinnati schools fare well under his leadership, so he's missed.
Yeah, no question. So let me ask you this. Obviously, there is one other court above the Supreme Court of the state of Ohio, and they are pretty good at making news. The ruling on healthcare recently, if you are allowed to speak to this, were you surprised at how things went there?
I was surprised by the justices who joined the majority opinion. I always thought that it would be upheld. Congress has been regulating healthcare for 50 years. And so while people may disagree with how Congress chose to regulate it, it seemed pretty, if you read the law professors from around the country, the overwhelming majority felt that it would be upheld. I was surprised with who the justices were in the majority.
I heard someone give an interesting argument recently where they said if you sort of were to stitch together that obviously in this way the judiciary, the Supreme Court did not intervene and overturn legislation that had, passed through the normal democratic processes. But if you went back over the last 12 years or so, you started with, Gore versus Bush. You then go ahead to Citizens United, which completely changes the fundraising landscape. If they had also then overturned health care, and part of the thesis was, in a dysfunctional Congress, it actually empowers the judiciary, but we might end up in a place where, the Supreme Court, of course, checks and balances vital, but was almost too strong. That, they were making too big a decision. Does the balance seem right to you right now?
Oh, I don't know. I think the balance, the magnificent thing about our country is that with the three branches, the balance ebbs and flows. And so I think we have to be very careful about politicizing the judicial branch. There are many people who would like to do it, but I actually think the framers were very wise to create that third branch. And I think, depending on your point of view, one of those branches at any given point can be deemed, quote, too powerful. But I think the thing to celebrate is that our country has existed for over 235 years. We're a pretty young country.
The frameworks worked fairly well so
far. They were.
Yeah.
And think about it, they had no way of knowing all the issues we would deal with today. They couldn't have known about the internet. They couldn't have known about satellites. But that simplistic document continues to be interpreted and survived from very simple concepts.
This might be a strange question to ask a woman who is currently running for Supreme Court in the state of Ohio, but to the point you just made about not overly politicizing the judiciary. Should this be an elected office? Should it be something that people campaign for?
It's what the Ohio Constitution calls for.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why she's such a good jurist. Okay, let me see if I can comment another. What about lifetime appointments? Is that democratic? Is that healthy? I think the same thing is, it lets someone get in there and have the total freedom to say, is this constitutional? Is it not constitutional? But at the same time, is that...
Well, you have that in the federal judiciary from the trial court on up. Ohio's voters had a chance to change how Supreme Court justices and judges were appointed back in 1986, and it was resoundingly defeated. So at this point, our Constitution requires that judges at every level be elected. There seems to be no impetus to change that, so it is what we have.
Right. Final question, and I like to throw some hard-hitting questions out there. Justice Yvette McGee-Brown. President of the United States was here recently. He stopped and ate some Skyline chili, a sort of strange Cincinnati concoction. Have you ever visited a Skyline while in Cincinnati?
Not on the campaign, but yes, I've had Skyline chili before.
All right, well, if you ever want to break bread over a nice, cheese coney, you call me up. I'm always game for that. Justice Yvette McGee-Brown, thank you so much for visiting us in studio. Continued good luck on the campaign trail, and we will be watching to see what happens in November. And of course, if people take nothing else away from this, no matter who you vote for, no matter what you do your homework so that when you show up at the polls, you're not just voting for the top of the ticket, but you're voting for the whole thing.
Absolutely.
All right, we appreciate you being in studio. We got a whole lot more coming up. You're listening to Talk of the Town with PG Sittenfeld on 1230 WDBZ, the buzz of Cincinnati.